So good afternoon and welcome to the London Financial Regulation Seminar. Today we have Dr. Jose Zapata Sevilla, who is a Spanish legal researcher who holds a Ph.D. in law from the University of Malaga and currently is our visiting scholar at the Center for Commercial Law Studies at Queen Mary University of London under the supervision of my colleague, Professor Rosa Maria Lastra. Previously, in 2021, Jose Zapata Sevilla has also had periods of research at the Institute of International Monetary Research and the University of Buckingham, where he completed by the end of 2022 the Postgraduate Certificate in Money in Banking and Central Banking. Today, Jose is analyzing Decentralized Autonomous Organization and is going to outline their own limits and perspective. For those of you that you don't know what is the London Financial Regulation Seminar, the London Financial Regulation Seminar is an inter-collegiate and interdisciplinary group of experts led by the Center for Commercial Law Studies and our Institute of Banking and Finance, under the leadership of Rosa Maria Lastra and myself. So without further ado, I will give the floor to our distinguished speaker. And Jose, you have around, let's say, 30 minutes, 40 minutes as you want. And then I will comment a little bit upon your paper and discussion. And then we will give the floor to the audience in order to collect some questions and answers. Thank you very much.
Should public powers promote by regulations stable coins like DAI to ease financial inclusion? So first of all, I would like to thank Daniele D'Alvia and Professor Daniele D'Alvia for having invited me to such an important seminar on financial law. It's such an honor for me. So to begin with, I would like to delve with some important concepts. First of all, we have DeFi, which is decentralized finance, regarding the provision of financial services. Secondly, we have DAOs, decentralized, as Daniel said before, decentralized autonomous organizations. And lastly, we have stablecoins, which are cryptocurrencies aiming to stabilize each unit of account regarding certain reference, like for instance, the US dollars. So about the background, what is the glue between these three concepts? So in these presentations, I will submit how a DAO can provide financial service in a decentralized way and can also provide with stable coins. So in particular, the aim of these presentations is to review the case of MakerDAO. And as a DAO managing a monetary system, which is a stable coin called DAI, as we will explain later on, and also covering its relationship with the law. Why have I chosen MakerDAO? First of all, because MakerDAO is a relevant actor in DeFi. And secondly, because it's a very complete, it gives us a very broad perspective of DeFi, providing loans, stable coins, etc. What is the methodology of these presentations? So we are drawing general conclusions from the analysis of a particular DAO, which is MakerDAO, and it's a stable coin. So now we are going to see some basic coordinates for placing MakerDAO in the DeFi universe. Two concepts to begin with. First of all, we have decentralization. In this context, decentralization refers to lack of control, of a lack of power concentration in a distributed ledger technology system like DAO. But decentralization is not absolute, so it is always relative. Indeed, the doctrine has proposed a sufficient decentralization test to check if a DLT system is really decentralized or not. So if the system is really decentralized, the regulators can address a subject to apply the regulation, for instance, the real owner or controller. But if the system is really decentralized, there is no real owner or controller, and we need to find another solution. For instance, addressing the token holders. On the other hand, we have the disintermediation concept. In this case, we refer to the substitution of traditional intermediaries or traditional middlemen for the technology, in this case, the distributed ledger technology, which is at the basis of the DAO. If you remember, the lawmakers always struggle when it comes to persecute infringement or breachment of the laws in peer-to-peer networks. In that case, it is important to shape the digital structure, if it is possible, to be able to apply the law. This legal approach is called, when it comes to the DLT environment, or is known in this sphere like the lowest code. But how will be this lowest code approach based? It can be, or we can choose to base it on an entity-based regulation, where the regulation pursues to ensure the viability of the financial entity, in this case, the DAO, against an entity-based regulations. In the case of the activity-based regulations, the lawmakers only regulates the provision of a financial service on a standalone basis, but not considering or not addressing the entity as such. So what happens in this case is that the activity-based regulation is only recommended when we can strictly separate the provision of the financial service from the entity. And as we will see later on, the DAOs can suffer from some financial risks. So therefore, the entity-based regulation, in my case, is preferred. And another question is that whether the lowest code should be based on a voluntary regulation or compulsory. In the voluntary regulation, we hope that the DAO self-regulates, so we can only provide incentives. But since we have financial goods at stake, I think that we need, in this case, also a compulsory and traditional financial law approach. MakerDAO, as a DAO, issues a particular stablecoin called DAI. But first of all, what is a stablecoin? Stablecoins are, as we said before, a cryptocurrency aiming to stabilize its unit of accounts, its value, in terms of a reference, mainly the US dollars. MakerDAO claims that DAI is money because it complies with all of the money functions. Unit of account, medium of exchange, store of value, etc. Although we should note that in practice, stablecoins are only used as a store or value in the cryptocurrency realm. So there is not a widespread use of stablecoins as money. That will be only a property of so-called global stablecoins like the Libra project, but no stablecoin has reached that status of global. There are several types of stablecoins in the market. We may find the so-called tokenized funds, the on-chain collateralized stablecoins, the off-chain collateralized stablecoins, the algorithmic stablecoins. The criteria in this case is what is the stabilization mechanism employed? How do we stabilize the stablecoin? In particular, DAI will be an on-chain collateralized stablecoin, as it stabilizes its value by virtue of volatile crypto assets. Some legal aspect about stablecoins. So recently, the European Parliament and the European Union authorities has passed the in crypto assets regulation that foresee several categories of stablecoin. One of the categories, asset referred token, can fit with the characteristics of DAI, but still it is not a suitable regulation for DAI because it treats MakerDAO, which is the issuer, as a traditional financial intermediary, which will lead, in my opinion, to problems to enforce that regulation. DAOs and the law, in this case, we are reviewing the legal status of so-called rogue DAOs, that are those DAOs that are ignoring the law, meaning that they have not used any legal form foreseen in the legal system, against DAOs which have used a legal form, and in particular which have incorporated. So what happens with rogue DAOs? With rogue DAOs, what happens is that they are not linked to any jurisdiction in particular, so they don't have a governing law. But at the same time, they can still suffer the unilateral application of the law when their activity affects their territory of a state. Comparing incorporate DAOs against rogue DAOs, the difference matters in terms of responsibility, of liability, because an incorporate DAO can benefit from the limitation of the liability if their legal form has, if the legal form grants that benefit. But on the other hand, rogue DAO cannot benefit from that limitation of responsibility and can be applied default legal regimes that are detrimental for them. This is the case of the BSEPX DAO in the United States. The court of California, of the District of California, found that this DAO was a general partnership meaning that each members could be fined personally liable or unlimited liable for the actions of the DAO. According to MakerDAO, DAI is money, accomplishing all of the money functions that we said before, and it provides financial inclusions as we are getting rid of those financial intermediaries that charges the people fees. So DAI, as it is more affordable, it provides financial inclusions. But how does DAI work in practice? We are going to see now what is the real use of DAI. DAI is indeed a leverage instrument in crypto assets. First of all, DAI is an over-collateralized stablecoin. This means that we can only get a fraction of DAI for the delivered collateral. This is due to the fact that the backing crypto assets are volatile, and we need to protect against that volatility, with a buffer. That is in this case the over-collateralization. Over-collateralization is used in this case because other alternatives like algorithmic stablecoins are more unstable. So over-collateralization delivers some stability after all. DAI, secondly, DAI is used as an investment tool by the DAI issuers. Why? Because when an investor generates DAI, he or she needs to check the liquidation ratio, which means that he must watch that the value of the collateral doesn't fall below that certain threshold. If that happens, if the collateral values fall below the threshold, then a penalty fee will be applied. Secondly, the DAI issuers face the need to pay interest for generating DAI. This interest is called the stability fee. So as a result, what we have is that the DAI issuers is incentivized to get capital gains from the markets, definitely, as we will explain later on. There is, in principle, there is a figure that can give some profitability to a stablecoin, which is the DAI saving rate. But it's not a real guarantee of that profitability. So in the end, the DAI issuers need to resort to leverage in crypto assets. How does leverage work, after all? So the process in principle is very simple. So we have some quantity of Ether. We deposit that Ether in a maker ball, which is a smart contract of the controlled by the MakerDAO. With that smart contract will generate DAI according to the liquidation ratio. Remember that this liquidation ratio works as the threshold that we need to respect. So some margin it's recommended to have more margin of collateral as a buffer. Then with the generated DAI, what can we do? We can go to the market again and buy more Ether. With that Ether, we expect this Ether to have its price increase. And then we can repeat this process as many times as possible. The logic behind it is that we are leveraging with DAI in Ether. So we can get more profits, but also we are assuming more risks. DAI can be also as an arbitration or arbitrage better instrument. First of all, there is no need to post collateral in any case to get DAI. We can get DAI as a last resort, let's say, with a flush loan. But the flush loan has some drawbacks. That is that the transaction granting the loan in favor of the borrower are the transaction that fulfills the obligations that pay back the loan definitely must be recorded in the same blockchain, in the same block of the blockchain. So as they must be recorded in the same block, they must happen in a flash, no? That is the reason of their name, their speed. If the lender does not manage to record the transaction fulfilling the obligation in that block, both transactions will be void, and the lender, he or she, still needs to pay the fees for the transaction. Arbitrage can be used in centralized exchange without the need of using flash loans. But in this case, what happens is that we should be capitalized in both exchanges to address the possibility of temporal gaps, preventing us from getting the profit. With flash loans in decentralized exchanges, we can do arbitrage activity without the need of being capitalized in both exchanges. So that is the advantages of flash loans. But what are we seeing in those cases of leverage and arbitrage? That DAI is only an investment product for sophisticated investors, not for the general public. How does MakerDAO work in practice? Or how is the governance system? So MakerDAO behaves as a central bank. It is a central bank in the end, but its governance structure is decentralized. It is a governance system so-called scientific, and it is based in new rules that contrast, that are opposite with the central bank, with the European Central Bank, for instance. So the aim of this governance system is to mitigate the risks affecting MakerDAO and to protect the peg of DAI with the US dollar. How does the stabilization mechanisms work in practice? So first of all, the collateral is the cornerstone. It stabilizes the unit of account. But what happens when these collateral values is below the liquidation ratio, that threshold? So in that case, the collateral is sold to get DAI and to burn it. We want less supply to match the peg with the US dollar. But could happen that selling the collateral is not enough to recover the peg. So in that case, the protocol must socialize the losses. How? So in the first place, it takes DAI from the maker buffer, which is a reserve, to take those DAI reserve and burn it once again to recover the peg. Still, imagine we can figure out that this is still not enough to recover the peg. So in the third place, the system can mint MKR tokens, which are the governance tokens of MakerDAO. By minting MKR tokens, the shareholders see how their shares are diluted. So we can conclude that the token holders of MKR have incentive to manage MakerDAO properly, because in that case, they can get income from seigniorage. As a last resort measure, we have an energy shutdown system which works, as we will explain later on, for extreme shocks. Well, now we are going to critically review the stabilization mechanisms. So the stabilization mechanisms, in the end, MakerDAO is not risk-free. It is not risk-free because in the last measures relies as a stabilization mechanisms, the support of the support of the governance token towards the stablecoin. There is a two-coin structure when the support token must help the stablecoin to stabilize the unit of account. How does that happen? So when the stablecoin is under the peg, then the support token or the governance token mints, so that the demand for the stablecoin rises. However, there is a case when the governance token is minting, but still the stablecoin cannot recover the peg. That is called the death spiral. The death spiral is the event that was the origin of the demise of the Luna stablecoin. Luna and his UST dollar was the event that was at their demise. But remember that we said that DAI is over-collateralized. DAI is in an over-collateralized stablecoins, but still they face volatility. So in an event of extreme volatility, these mechanisms of the support token being minted to support or to help the stable coins could also be activated, leading to a death spiral. So in conclusion, what we have is that over-collateralization does not suppress any risks affecting DAI. Well, we must acknowledge that MakerDAO is concerned about this risk. So they have enacted some measures in the governance system to deal with these risks affecting DAI. First of all, we should note that DAI is multi-collateral. It means it does not only use Ether, it uses other crypto assets as collateral. For each collateral or crypto asset, the token holder must decide on its risk parameters. For instance, the liquidation ratio, the penalty fee, the total debt accepted or exposure, etc. In addition, the MakerDAO foresee or establish the participation of some external actors, that is the working of the options where DAI is sold to where the collateral, is sold to burn DAI. These external actors are, for instance, the so-called keepers, providing liquidity, and oracles, providing information about prices and enacting the emergency shutdown system if necessary. About the emergency shutdown system, we must realize that it cannot freeze the losses. It can only trigger a final auction of DAI, but it cannot mitigate all the risks. So, is there any efficient stablecoin alternative? Yes, indeed. If stablecoins use safe assets as a backing for the unit, then they don't face these risks. So the Libra project, for instance, proposed that was based on a cryptocurrency supported by safe assets, but it did not receive the regulatory approval. An economy based on unsound money and unsafe money is considered dangerous by an important sector of the doctrine. So one sector of the academia which compared stable coins with the free banking wildcat age proposed that a stablecoin should either be transformed into public money by forcing stablecoin issuers to back their asset, the stablecoin units with safe access, or authorities could also expel from the market this private stablecoin and replace them. The aim is to replace them with central bank digital currency, also known as CBDC. As we saw earlier, for several reasons, DAI is not suitable to be a generalized medium of exchange providing financial inclusion, because it has so many risks and its working is too complex. However, we still have several regulatory options. For instance, first of all, we have the United States draft bills on stablecoins, which seems to follow the approach suggested by this doctrine that says that stablecoins should be nationalized, in the sense that regulators must force stablecoin issuers to back them with safe assets. On the other hand, we find in the European Union the market in crypto assets regulation. In this case, they foresee a category, a classification that contemplates the existence of stable coins like DAI. And I understand that they may exist in this form as niche products for niche markets. Lastly, there is other proposal consisting of the lawmakers promoting healthy monetary competition between public and private money, stable coins, by passing some measures. For instance, granting banking licenses to stablecoin issuers, to give them access to central bank reserves, etc. So to sum up, what are the conclusions of this presentation? First of all, decentralization in blockchain is always relative. This means that we need to review on a case-by-case basis which system is really decentralized or not. Having that answer in mind, we may find who is responsible in a DAO to comply with the regulation. If it is not really decentralized, we might find we need to address the real owner or controller. If, on the other hand, if it is really decentralized, we should address another subject, for instance, the token holders, the developers, the miners, etc. In any case, the regulation on stablecoins should be the lowest code approach regulating DAOs should be based on an entity-based and compulsory or prescriptive regulation. As we said before, MakerDAO issues a stablecoin called DAI. These stablecoins fits into the categories of the market in crypto assets regulation. However, this regulations is thought for a traditional intermediary, so it's not matched completely. It is very important to distinguish between incorporated DAOs that can benefit from some legal status, like mainly limiting liability, against rogue DAOs that cannot enjoy these benefits, and therefore its members can be found unlimited liable for the DAO's actions. DAI is not used in reality as money. So you might allege that there are some cases, but what I found in my research is that it's mainly used as a leverage instrument, as a sort of funding for flash loans. MakerDAO established a decentralized scientific governance systems to address all the risks affecting MakerDAO. But in any case, we must take in account that we are speaking about mitigation, not about suppressing risks. Indeed, there are some stablecoin proposals which are safer and could serve better as money to provide financial inclusion. This was the case of the Libra, of the Facebook Libra, but it received, it suffered a refusal, the refusal of the public powers. And lastly, answering our initial questions, public powers should not regulate DAI as money that provides financial inclusion, but it can give incentives to others, safer, stable coins that can accomplish that function and indeed can create a situation of healthy monetary competition with the measures that I mentioned earlier. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think it was very insightful presentation and very timely presentation, especially for what is happening today in crypto finance and in the world of cryptocurrency, especially if we look at stable coins. Stable coins, in fact, they are having some troubles since at least the big crash of Luna and Terra in 2022, in the summer 2022. Subsequently, we had another crash that was the crash of FTX as a centralized exchange in crypto finance. And that was November 2022. During the same months, all the major, we can call them crypto banks, so Celsius, Voyager, and so on, they started to fail and they filed for bankruptcy in the US. So in this moment, I mean, it is a period that is called the crypto winter, where essentially crypto finance is not having its best days. However, as always, if there is financial innovation, there is always some kind of opportunities for market players. And so I think that also the presentation that you gave us today is showing that in the field of decentralized finance, we are experiencing some sort of financial innovations, like the DAO system. In general, what I think is interesting is when you were touching upon the DAI stablecoin, so this type of token that at the end of the presentation you said is not really money, it's something else, it's more something for flash loans, flash leverage, you said. And that is true in the end. I mean, I don't think that they are really serving the function of money. But surely this idea of introducing always stablecoin is interesting because probably, I guess that this idea wants to remind us on the fact that stable coins are going to become a product for retail investors. Stable coins are going to become a product always more criticized by qualified investors. In fact, if we see Silicon Valley Bank, one of the main depositors there was a stablecoin provider. And essentially he deposited 3.3 billion of stablecoins there. So essentially, once there was a problem of a movement of interest rates, even a little movement of interest rates for a depositor that is not acting like a retail depositor like me and you, because no one has 3.3 billion usually on a bank account deposited. So for this reason, of course, this kind of connection between traditional finance, a Silicon Valley Bank, and the stablecoin provider was not very promising. So essentially, already traditional finance is looking at decentralized finance and centralized finance as something that is dangerous, for sure, as something that is not very good. But of course, your presentation is looking also at financial inclusion. So from a financial inclusion perspective, for sure, there are also many people in the world still today, unfortunately, that they don't have access to a bank account, a traditional bank account. So this type of operation of leverage or this type of tokens, even stable coins in general, they can represent a means of payment even for everyday expenses. So this is something that I think is also what then at the end of the day, the US and also the UK, they are going to look at and to regulate. So to regulate stable coins as a retail product. Another point interesting, I think, is what even Charles Goodhart, Professor Allen, Professor Rosa Lastra, they were all claiming that essentially we have this trend towards centralization. So centralization in the sense that at the end of the day, even the stable coin has to, in any case, rely on a stable value, that is the dollar, that is the hard currency. So in this kind of trend towards centralization, for sure, the central bank digital currencies or CBDCs, they might represent a good answer to mitigate or in order to also maybe provide a final answer to the private cryptocurrency schemes that they didn't work a lot. So this is quite interesting, your perspective. And I think even to conclude my small and short remarks as a discussant, I think one point very interesting in your presentation that actually attracted my attention, and that I don't know if you use it on purpose because you really know where is coming from this definition, or is something that happened by chance, but you said that the law is code. So the law is code actually remind me about Caterina Pistor, that wrote the Code of Capital. I don't know if you wanted to transmit to us this idea of Caterina Pistor.
I think I brought that idea from the book of Andrea De Filippi, Filippi and Wright. Yes.
Okay. Essentially, I mean, Caterina Pistor is a professor at Columbia University, and she's German. So in reality, she's European, but then she moved to Germany now since many years ago. And she wrote a very important book, very interesting book, The Code of Capital, where she says the law is code. She also wrote many papers about the legal theory of finance. So she says and she claims that finance without law cannot be codified. So for this reason, it was very interesting, because probably even in your research, I mean, Caterina Pistor can give a nice contribution, or can fit very well, because then you started to speak about self-regulation, law as code, possible codification, and even essentially in the DAO structure, probably I think it's very difficult to see a sort of hierarchy. So in the sense that where is the apex in the DAO structure? The apex can be the law as code, so like financial regulation, or will be self-regulation, and so there will be guidelines and protocols that they can play the role of the code. And this is something that in reality, I mean, there is not still a clear answer. But if we go for sure towards a centralization, we might always think that it's not very important, the form. So the form can be law stricto sensu, let's say, or can be the law as self-regulation. As far as is determining some rules for the future, this is enough to stay at the apex and then to determine a structure in terms of a legal framework. So I think your presentation, I mean, is very interesting. And I think especially in the future, we will see always more and more of this kind of applications. I mean, now you only mentioned some types of DAO, but there is also Olympus DAO. There are many projects, and they are always in evolution. So that I think is also the good part of finance, crypto finance, financial innovations in general. So thank you very much for this. And I think because we have 10 minutes for questions, so I would like to give the possibility to everyone connected today to pose any question to Joseph. You can even write in the chat if you prefer. Let's see. I see connected maybe Giuseppe, while Juan. Any question from your side?
Well, if you don't have question, I would like to thank you for your kind remarks. Also, to add that I fully agree with your assessment of the situation with DAOs and decentralized finance. I think that in the end, a state cannot regulate it, decentralized fully decentralized finance, we need some elements of decentralization. So the element of this of centralization will give some safety, some security that will give us the opportunity to enjoy that financial innovation for the general public. Because nowadays, what we are seeing is that most of the stable coins, most of the products are scams, because they are unregulated. So we don't have any proof, any valid criteria to, and they are open also. And there is the fact that they are open to legal investors. So that contributes to that situation of scams harming even the concept of decentralized finance. So we will begin to see some institutions that are not really decentralized, but will take advantage of this wave of financial innovation, like the CBDC and other projects which use public and private collaboration. So I think that it is the future, and hopefully in the future we will be able to disregard this stablecoin project that are only a scam, and they take advantage of the fact that people don't have enough financial culture.
So yes, you claim that essentially consumer protection is very important.
Yeah,
we should enact maybe specific rules for stablecoins that at the end of the day, I mean, MiCA in Europe is what they are trying also to do, essentially to design a framework also, especially for stablecoins.
Yeah.
And this is, I think, is a good initiative. And also, I think in general, there is always a possibility for traditional finance to take some innovations that are in decentralized finance, like tokenization of assets. So probably traditional finance can really learn from the mistakes of decentralized and centralized finance, and probably one day they can operate in parallel for different purposes, we can say also.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. And I hope to see you again around at the University of London. Thanks, of course, also to stay with us this year. And also, I would like to bring the excuses of Professor Ettore Maria Lombardi, because he could not be here today for a very sad event that he had in his family. So in reality, this is one of the reasons, unfortunately, that he could not join us. So thank you very much, everyone, and it was a pleasure as always. Thanks.
Thank you.